Hey, this is Dr. Mindy Pelz, founder of the Reset Academy. And if you're looking to be in better health and learn more about biohacking, then you should be listening to the Hacked Life podcast with my good friend, Joel Evan.
Hey, what's up? Joel Evan here, host of the Hacked Life podcast and weight loss coach for busy men. I'm excited to tell you I just dropped an 8-week program dedicated to motivated and busy men who want to lose weight. Let's face it, guys, when you lose weight, you feel more confident and you have higher self-esteem and you go out and you crush the world. You crush your goals and you start living your higher purpose. So if you're interested, DM me at Joel Evan Coaching or email me below, info@joelevancoaching.com.
All right, I'm here with Dr. Mindy Pelz. She is a renowned holistic health and fasting expert who's on a mission to get 1 million people fasting. If you don't know Dr. Mindy, she has like one of the most popular YouTube channels out there for alternative health. She's garnered over 15 million views. She has the Resetter podcast. It's like one of Apple's top 40. And she's the author of 3 best-selling books, The Menopause Reset, which is her latest book, The Reset Factor, and The Reset Kitchen. Dr. Mindy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we were just talking offline, and I was just telling you, I got to finally see you speak at the recent Biohacking Congress event in Silicon Valley, and your talk on fasting for women, which I want to dive into later in the podcast, blew my mind because you were the first one ever that I've ever heard, like without a shadow of a doubt, say, this is how women need to fast.
Yes. And as I told you, it was something that I discovered through my own failure of fasting, perhaps. Like I had my own hurdle that I had to overcome. And then we taught it to so many women, and I started to see so many trends of what worked and didn't work that we had to get really clear with how we taught women how to fast. And the conversation around women and fasting right now is a little bit like fast, but just don't do it all the time, which isn't really that helpful. We need more clear steps than that.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. It's like, yeah, you should probably put more collagen, or you probably need more protein in the morning. It's like, okay, but is that every day? Is that once a day? Is that every other day? How do I do this? So,
right.
Very cool.
Agreed.
And then when you went down this rabbit hole of fasting for yourself, was that because of menopause? Your bout through menopause?
Yeah. So what's really interesting, and I think not enough women realize this, is that at 40, as your ovaries start to make their long, I call it their retirement party. It's like they go about 10 to 15 years making a bit of a decline. They're not making sex hormones as efficiently as they used to. So they actually hand over the job of making sex hormones to the adrenal glands. And in that transition, there is this wild ride where some days you have a ton of estrogen, other days you don't have any estrogen. And so this is why I always say everybody needs to hug a menopausal woman or a woman over 40, because most 40-year-olds don't even realize that they're going through this. We get more irritable. We don't sleep as well. We become a little bit edgier and moodier. And a lot of that, I was trying to solve the answer for myself. Like, why am I feeling this way? What has hijacked my body and my mind? And one of the tools that I realized that really helps women over 40 is fasting, because as estrogen goes into its decline, you actually become more insulin resistant. So you need estrogen for collagen. So we've already talked a little bit about collagen, but you need it for collagen production, but you also need it to keep yourself insulin sensitive. So when estrogen goes down, you become insulin resistant. And if you're a 45-year-old woman, you're a little bit lost because you're like, I'm exercising the same amount. I'm doing the same diet. Why am I putting on weight? And this is where we got to start throwing fasting into the mix.
I love that. And, like I said, I really enjoyed your speech on fasting. And, I'm married and my wife's, she just turned 41. So maybe I selfishly wanted you on the show just so you could coach me in how to be a better husband for her.
Yes.
So more hugs.
Read my book. You got to read my book. It'll help you.
Oh, I've read. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have the book. I have 2 versions of the book, so don't worry.
Awesome.
It's crazy. When I was reading your book, you mentioned that one of your friends, who's a doctor and very skilled, told you, because you were going through menopause yourself, you were having these wild swings, depression, and she told you, I believe it was she said, yeah, I'm sorry, but my textbooks have failed me. I don't have an answer for you. Like, how did that make you feel that, like, your own friends, colleagues, you're a doctor yourself, like, they didn't know what to do?
Yeah. Actually, it was liberating at that moment, because what happened is I sort of had this value for myself that when I was at my kids' school, I was mom. I wasn't doctor. I wasn't talking shop to people. And then outside of that, I, had my doctor hat on. So the last thing I wanted to do was start talking shop with another doctor at a science fair. Yeah. It was like against every core value, but my menopause symptoms were so bad that I was literally looking like, give me the quick answer. I just need to know the solution. And you're so respected in our community. You're an OB. Give me that solution. And I was prepared to do anything she told me to do. Take antidepressants, get on HRT, whatever. I was fully ready. Yeah. And instead, what she said to me was, I don't have an answer for you. My medical textbooks have failed me. And then knowing that I was more into alternative, natural ways, she actually flipped it on me and said, what are you doing to help people with this? And which was so ironic.
The challenge is thrown.
Yes. Yeah. So I went home. You know what I did that night? I actually went home, and the whole car ride home, I was thinking to myself, if it's happening to every woman who goes through menopause, there's not a medical solution to it, then what's going on in the environment? So I went home that night and I Googled environmental toxins that affect hormones. And I ended up down a rabbit hole of information. But the two that really stood out to me, and if you guys haven't watched these two videos, I recommend everybody go and watch them. One is put out by the Environmental Working Group, and Ken Cook, the president of the Environmental Working Group, put out a study that they did on 10 Americans. And they took 10 Americans across the country and they measured their toxic load. They wanted to see if maybe where you lived in America had an influence over what toxins you were in. Well, they came out of the study and they said, well, it doesn't look like we can say that if you live in the South, you're going to have more exposure to this toxin. You live in the Northeast, you have this. Their hypothesis was wrong. But what they did find is that these 10 Americans had over 200 cancer-causing chemicals inside of them. The abundance of toxins in them was unreal. And then at the end, I'm going to give the cliffhanger, but at the end, they basically said the only thing these 10 Americans had in common is they were in the womb. It was measured in umbilical cord blood. These 10 Americans hadn't even stepped foot on our planet before they already had it. I mean, they already are coming in with a toxic load. Wow. And that just got me researching like crazy. The other great study is done by Robin O'Brien, or she has a TED Talk about how one of her kids went into an anaphylactic shock and almost died from eating Go-Gurt. And when she looked into the ingredients, she found out that the FDA has put in over 50,000 ingredients into our food that are called GRAS. And GRAS means generally recognized as safe. 50,000 ingredients that have not been proven guilty. So we have the FDA is like, you're safe until you can show us otherwise. And so we have cancer-causing chemicals in our food. We have hormone-disrupting chemicals in our food because our system is not set up to protect us from those things. You have to go through the massive amounts of studies and research to prove an ingredient is bad, and nobody's going to do that.
I'm laughing just because I'm listening to you talk and I'm thinking, what are you talking about? The FDA always looks after us. I mean, after all, isn't the newest thing? It's safe and effective. I mean, last time I checked, but I won't. I'm not even going to mention that because I don't want to get banned.
Yeah, there you go. Good idea.
So that's crazy. I mean, just thinking about that whole idea of the toxic load. One of my mentors, Stephen Cabral, always talks about the rain barrel effect, and like as people's rain barrels get overflowing, the body's very resilient, but over time, the rain barrel just overflows. They can't, and it's toxic metals and all this stuff. And I know, I think one of your mentors, Dr. Dan Pompa, he talks a lot about that, like you just said, babies coming into the world, they get a lot of the toxins already from their mother, right? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah. And so that was part of my process going through menopause is like, okay, because I literally at 40, I was super healthy, eating, 6 meals a day, running, 10 to 20 miles a week. Like just life was great. I felt invincible at 40. By 43, I wasn't sleeping. I was depressed. I was anxious. Like I was like, what the heck just happened to me? And so one of the things I learned is that as the ovaries start to make their retirement and their decline, is that when estrogen's going up and down, it signals the release of toxins out of our stored tissues. So we have lead in our bones, we have, mercury in fat, we've got, cadmium is in our lungs, cesium, thallium that is in our nervous tissue. And this hormonal swing that women go through causes these hormones to get dumped into our system. And now we feel the effects of them. So that really kind of opened up my like, oh my gosh, I think I need to detox. I think I need to do something different here that I'm not doing. And detox was pivotal for my journey. And so many women, since I've been talking about it, so many women are expressing their same level of frustration. One day doing great, and then the next day they're a hot mess.
It's interesting because when my son, he's 7 now, but when he was around 4, I had a hair tissue mineral analysis ran on him, and he had high levels of lead. Actually, it really wasn't high. It was like, if you look at the graph, it was like 1 bar. But interestingly enough, the health coach who was coaching me through this said, Joel, what's up with his lead levels? I'm like, what do you mean? It's just 1 bar. It doesn't seem like it's that high. And she's like, no, you don't understand. For a kid that young, she's like, do you have like lead painted toys? Do you live in a lead painted house? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, at the time I'm living in an old house in San Francisco. I'm like, maybe. But then I was also thinking, wow, maybe, it's his mother who passed that along unknowingly. So it was very interesting. And, even him coming into the world, he's already coming in with this heavy load. So you don't even know.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, and one that anybody listening needs to not have any mommy guilt. But when hormones are in their highest and the most out of control, let's just say, so puberty, pregnancy, and perimenopause, that's when these toxins get dumped out. But with babies, the challenge that we have is they don't have any blood-brain barrier. So when they get the toxic dump, it goes straight into the brain and into nervous tissue. So they're already coming into this world with a toxic load. So, and then we are adding toxins through our food, through the vast amount of shots we give. I mean, you name it, but the load just is accumulating so quickly for these little guys. And now we've got more ADD, more behavioral challenges, more learning disabilities, more cancers, more chronic disease in these little guys. And so much of that is toxins.
Yeah. And so, even from reading your book and just some of the examples you gave in the menopause, the reset, it seems, I mean, are you seeing then a lot of success when you're doing heavy metal detox for women?
Crazy.
Is that like, and even for yourself, right? Other than fasting, I mean, fasting's just one facet of it, but it seems like from what I got, like the heavy metal detox is like a game changer for everybody.
It's a total game changer. And in the book, I talked about 5 things that women need to do over 40. And one of them is you got to start detoxing. And for me, it gave me my sleep back. I just, all of a sudden I started sleeping better. Now we've gone on to take, thousands of menopausal women through this detox. And my favorite thing that they say is they go, oh my God, I feel like you reconnected me to a younger version of myself. And that's because what most 40-plus-year-old women don't realize is this toxic dump is happening and their symptoms are because of it. They walk into their medical doctor's office and their doctor says, yeah, you have menopause symptoms, you have depression, and we start medicating these symptoms that are already a toxic problem to begin with. So when you start removing toxins, all of a sudden the hormones work really well. We're not meant to suffer through menopause. That's bottom line. Yeah. But the medical profession will tell you we are. And you talk to any menopausal woman, she'll be like, well, then why am I suffering?
Yeah.
So, but this is why we have to give women more solutions than just suck it up and take an antidepressant.
Yeah, I love that. That is so, and you're, you're championing that, and you are proof that, hey, you don't have to suffer. Here's some key steps. Could you just kind of, summarize, kind of just recapture? You have it really nicely laid out. There's 5 key steps that you mentioned in the book about, resetting the menopause symptoms.
Yeah, so the 5 things, they're pretty simple, but each one you'll spend some time working on. So the first is it really starts with awareness. Any woman over 40, your ovaries are going on a decline. So let's change your lifestyle. I feel like the Menopause Reset, I really see that book as like you give every 40-year-old woman that book, and you're like, look, here's what you need to do. I'm such a fan of us fixing things with lifestyle. So the 5 things are, now's the time to fast, and we can chat about that in a moment. Like, stop eating all day. There's no science behind 6 meals a day speeds up your metabolism. Fasting is going to help you burn fat better than any other tool I've ever seen. Second is you're going to need to learn to vary your carb load. So I call it keto variations. If you don't like keto, if you're like, all these keto fanatics, I don't know about it. Well, guess what? After 40, you need to throw some keto days in, and there needs to be a lot of variation there. So, and we can chat a little bit about that and how you map that to your cycle. The third is we actually have microbiome, a set of bacteria in our gut that break estrogen down. So you're already going to get these highs and lows with estrogen. You better make sure you've got enough of these bacteria to break estrogen down. So eating more polyphenol foods, prebiotic, probiotic foods. If you've been on lots of antibiotics, now's the time to do some microbiome repair. And then the 4th one is detox, and we already talked about that. And then the 5th one is the one I'm still working on. I made it the 5th one on purpose because I'm like, I'm not an expert in it. I'm learning it, and it's called Rushing Woman Syndrome, and that was coined by Dr. Libby Weaver. And it's basically we can't do what we used to be able to do. We are not biologically made to overachieve, over-rush. We're just not. We're not made for that. So when our adrenals are taking on an extra load, we got to take some more downtime.
Yeah, I love that 5th one. I was reading that one, and I'm like, yeah, right. Like, when is it? When do we take a break? Like, when does that happen? And I'm thinking of you. I just know how much you do and how much you give back, and how you have your full-time practice. You have an amazing podcast and all the YouTube videos that you do. I'm like, yeah, when does she ever really take a break? But yeah.
I know, that's why I always say I'm trying. Like, I'll give you an example. Our youngest son is going off to college, so we are officially empty nesters come September.
Nice.
So I have no excuse for not vacationing more. So we are already setting up. I got a 10-day vacation coming in August. I'm already trying to line my vacations up to hopefully, counteract my rushing woman syndrome.
That's great. Really quick before we kind of go into some of those 5 steps, I'm just curious, where do you stand on bioidentical hormones? Like, what's your thought? I mean, I'm sure I remember I read a book I forgot what it's called, but estrogen I know has always been deemed like you don't want estrogen, like that causes cancer at a certain point of age. But then I'm hearing other doctors, and it's the same thing with TRT for men, testosterone replacement therapy. They're saying no, you could do it. I don't know. I mean, as a natural kind of guy, I always kind of go back and forth. I'm all for the biohacking, but I'm wondering, is it really necessary?
Yeah. So here's where I stand. I think with all medication, you have to look at what are the benefits versus the risks. When it comes to medication, we never talk about the risks. Even though they put it on the back half of the commercial, we don't want to look at that. We only want to see the benefit. So for me, with HRT, the benefit versus risk is just the risks are too high. There's too much evidence of long-term cancer problems, and it's not in my wheelhouse. It's not. I'm not comfortable with it. If you do the HRT, if women that are listening, I really want to point out that it's not a free pass from doing these 5 lifestyle changes. So it may help your symptoms temporarily, but if you don't do these 5 lifestyle changes, you're still more prone to the breast cancers, ovarian cancers, cardiovascular disease. So that's what I always tell like people in our membership group. I'm like, I just want you to be aware, if you do it, it's not a free pass. Now, bioidenticals are interesting because the downside, the risks are not that great. So I can understand why women would want to do them. Here's why I don't do them. I want to try to correct everything with my lifestyle. So I have learned to follow my symptoms. So at about 47, I had completely lost my period. And I was like, okay, is this menopause? Am I like officially in it? And then I started to read that the healthiest time to go into menopause is from 52 to 55. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, if I'm going in at 47, there's something wrong. So I started working the 5 principles, really doing it like to a T, and the cycle came back very regular. Now, if I'd thrown some medication at that, and I still have, I'll be 52 in October, and I still have a very regular cycle. If I'd thrown drugs at it, I wouldn't have been able to know how to use my lifestyle to course correct. Yeah. And that is my concern, is it numbs us out from what we should be doing with lifestyle.
Yeah, I love that. I remember it's like when I talked to Cameron George behind True Kava, he was talking about, it's like, imagine you had like a gasoline tank and you had a hole in the gasoline tank, and so you had gas leaking out all the time. And so your solution by, let's say, doing bioidentical hormones in this case is you're just filling the tank up more, but you never actually plug the hole.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And I have empathy for women that like are like, I don't care, I'm going to do it. And that's great. But I just want to say, you still got to do the 5 things. Yeah. I actually, with the Menopause Reset, the reason that book even came around was my YouTube audience asked for it. They were like, tell us what you're doing to help with menopause. I got so many questions. I was like, I'll just put in a book for you guys. How about that? So, and then, writing a book is a daunting task. And then one day I was looking at some research, and 70% of hormonal cancers happen to women postmenopausal. And it was like that statistic that told me, okay, I got to get the word out. I got to get this out to people, because if we don't manage those 40-year-old years right, we're going to set ourselves up for more problems later on.
And it's funny because I just reread your book again the other night prior to the interview, and I was rereading it, and that stuck in me because my mother had breast cancer in her early 50s. And so I thought, holy cow, it kind of dawned on me again, like, wow, like there's probably a reason for that, like based on everything you said you outlined in the book.
Right. Right. And but what we do is we go into the doctor, and you're 50 years old. The doctor says you have breast cancer, and you say, why? The doctor says, oh, it's genetic. That's I don't know if I can swear on your podcast,
but
you
absolutely can. Actually, you know what he told? Actually, I remember my mom's was an imbalance of estrogen. They actually said it was an estrogen related, I think, breast cancer.
Yeah. Well, and so to me, that's okay. Then which estrogen? We have 3 estrogens. So we have 1 protective and 2 harmful. So did she have enough protective estrogen and not enough and too much of the harmful ones? Like, what exactly was going on? How much progesterone did she have? Progesterone keeps estrogen under control. So these like little like one word, like it's genetics, you have too much estrogen. Like whenever you're with your doctor, you got to say why. Why do I have that? What else should I know? And instead, they want to give you the diagnosis and the pill and give you the quick solution. But it's not. We're not that simple. We're more complex.
Yeah, and instead the option is, what do you want, radiation or chemo? It's like, what?
Right.
Whoa, and it's tough because when you're at that situation that late in the game, it becomes of cancer. Oh my God, this is life and death. And I can, like you said, I have empathy for women. It's like you have to now it's like you feel like a gun's to your head, and you have to make a quick decision in a time of uncertainty. So it's tough.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. You just brought up something fascinating too about and I didn't realize you do you'll run Dutch tests for women, and you can kind of talk about that, but I didn't realize that there's different type of estrogen metabolites. I thought we just had like 1 estrogen and 1 progesterone, and you actually break it down. You're like, no, there's different ones, and it's important to know which ones. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, so there's 3 estrogens that we put an emphasis on, and they're estrogen metabolites. So this is how estrogen breaks down. And this is the way I look at it from a functional standpoint, is that there's 2-OH, 4-OH, 16-OH. And the Dutch test will tell you how you're breaking estrogen down. And the way you break the total estrogen down is really important because, for example, if you're too low in 16-OH, which is technically a harmful estrogen, but if you're too low in it, it could be that your liver isn't functioning right and it's not breaking down estrogen properly, so it's staying stuck inside the tissues. 2-OH is your protective. You're going to get this from flax seeds. You're going to get it from more plant-based. I think every woman over 40 needs to really up her green vegetables. That's where you're going to lean into more of these evening primrose oil. You're going to get a lot more of those protective. 4-OH, this is your endocrine disruptors. These are your toxic beauty products that are accumulating. These are your heavy metals. So when we look at a Dutch test, they do this really cool pie chart on one of the pages, which I'm a visual learner, so I like to just show me the visual. They have this cool pie chart, and what it'll show is, do you have enough protective? Do you have too much of the carcinogenic ones? And what's your liver doing? Is your liver breaking this down? And I swear, if we got that in the hands of every woman over 40, I personally run one every year on myself, we would end breast cancer. I have no doubt.
That's
because
so
we could
powerful.
course correct.
Yeah.
And the problem is there's nothing. We do mammograms. Well, there's a lot of false positives for that. We go into our OB's office and we say, I think my hormones are off. And they just randomly take blood. They don't look at the day of your cycle. So we haven't given women enough tools to be able to identify if breast cancer is growing in her or not. And the Dutch test does that so well.
Man, that is so cool. Yeah, I love that. Like you said, cancer, we'll wipe that out.
We could totally wipe it out.
Yeah.
But not to be cynical, but financially, that's going to hurt a few
Yeah.
of our big corporations if we wipe out breast cancer.
Yeah.
That's the harsh reality.
Yeah. And then, you have another great part of the book where you talk about the estrobolome. Well, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but everyone knows there's a microbiome, but you're saying, no, there's also an estrobolome, as if estrogen has, there's a microbiome or bacteria that actually makes estrogen. Are you running tests as well for that?
Yeah, so there's this stool test that you can take to figure that out. My 3 favorite tests that I swear we could course correct every single menopausal woman is know your toxic load. So we do heavy metals, we do the Dutch test, and then we do a gut test. So we can see, is your gut breaking down your hormones right? What's going on with your hormones? And then do you have a toxic piece to it? So those 3 tests are the best ones that I've found. I call it the estrobolome. I've seen a lot of people call it different things, but it's such a cool concept. And this is where, if we could just acknowledge how miraculous our bodies are. We literally are designed with everything we need. We just never got the owner's manual. And and again, this is women going in their 40s. They never got the owner's manual. So we've got these bacteria that break estrogen down. And what they do when they break estrogen down is they make it so it's usable for the cells. Okay, so let's talk about a woman who goes into her 40s. She's been on birth control for 2 decades. Mm-hmm. She's been on 20 rounds of antibiotics, which is pretty common. And she goes running into her 40s. She has no amount of these bacteria. So her estrogen's going up and down. She's getting hot flashes. She's gaining weight. She's not sleeping. And she has no clue that she's just missing the bacteria to help her break estrogen down so it can get into the darn cell and actually do what estrogen's meant to do. So taking care of your gut over 40 for women is crazy pivotal. We've really got to look at gut health totally different. And the problem with gut health is that, people are waking up to it, which is great, but you can have a gut problem and never have a gut symptom. So I heard the other day, Dr. Tom O'Brien came to our group of doctors and he spoke on gluten and wheat. And he said that what most people don't realize about like a leaky gut, for example, is that the number one symptom of a leaky gut is brain inflammation.
Wow.
It's not pain in the stomach. So when we talk about gut microbes, this doesn't mean you have to have anything wrong with your digestion. These microbes are building you an immune system. They're breaking estrogen down. They're giving you neurotransmitters. And if you've been on birth control pill for a long time and you've been on antibiotics, there is no doubt that that system needs some repair.
Yeah, I love that you said that because, I had an organic acids test ran a while back, and I had amounts of candida, a yeast, an overgrowth of yeast in my gut. And if you ask me how my digestion is, how I feel, my brain fog, I feel great. I mean,
right.
I'd be like you saying, hey, I'm going in my 40s, whatever. I feel great. Like I don't have any major issues. I just want to see if I can get better. But even I had candida, and if I didn't test it, I would have had no idea.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. And I think this is the whole premise of functional medicine, right? Is that we have sort of two systems. We have the system where you go to your doctor when you have a symptom, and then we try to treat the symptom. And then where functional medicine is really thriving is that we're saying, hey, why don't we look along the way and see how you're functioning? And that's what tests like this are doing.
Very cool. I wanted to talk just briefly about, we've mentioned it, but I was hoping you could break down the fasting like windows that you talk about, the power phase and the rebuilding phase, the regenerative. There's different. You have like power phase 1 and 2, and it's all based on women's cycle throughout the 28 days. Could you just kind of break that down, like 0 to 12, and kind of how you stumbled upon that?
Well, so how I stumbled upon it is 43, all my symptoms showed up. And then the first tool I found was detox. So I started detoxing. The second tool I found was fasting. So once I got myself fat adapted, I loved fasting so much because my mental clarity improved, my energy. I stopped getting the 3 o'clock dips in the afternoon. I could keep my weight where I wanted it. So that was about 45 that I started really discovering that. And then one day I decided to run a Dutch test on myself. And when I got it back, my estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone were lower than a postmenopausal woman. And I was like 45. I'm like, and I still had a cycle. I was like, What is going on? So I realized I was fasting too much. And I really started to dive into what the needs were when you look at a 30-day cycle. And I started, and I'll explain those needs in a moment, but what happened was I fixed myself first, and then I was like, okay, this is interesting. Let me try it on like my clinic patients. Saw a change there. Then I was like, okay, let me try it in my online community. So I went to my YouTube, and I was like, hey guys, let's try this. Tell me how this works for you. Oh my God, like hundreds of thousands of women started reporting back like, oh my God, thank you so much. My cycle has been restored following these principles. So last year we put it into what I call the fasting circle. I've actually now written a book on it that will come out in the next year or so that I'm pretty excited about. And the idea is that when you start your period, so day 1 to day 10, your body is making estrogen. During that time, you can fast all you want. You can fast like a queen. You can go keto. You can restrict. Like if you want to lose weight, like do it in that first part. Then when you go, and we call that the power phase. And I called it a power phase because you can power up your innate intelligence and you can create miracles in your body. Now, in that ovulation period, what's fascinating there is we have estrogen at its peak, and we have testosterone at its peak, and a little bit of progesterone. So in this little weird 5-day period, I call it the manifestation phase because you are wickedly powerful in the sense that you, with all that estrogen, you can articulate really well. I always say if you want to go ask for a raise from your boss, you should do it then. You know, estrogen is what allows us to multitask. Your skin's going to glow. Your hair is going to be full. Like you're going to look amazing during this time. So and testosterone gives us drive and motivation, and it helps you build muscle. And then you have a little bit of progesterone that kind of calms you. So literally basically, you want to get to know a woman in this 5-day period because she's at her best.
Yeah.
And so in that time, intermittent fasting's okay. You can do that. I really encourage women to work on their estrobolome, add more leafy greens in so you can break that estrogen down. But you only get 5 days, so it's a short little period. Then when you come out of that, you have a 6-day window, about maybe another 5-day window from day 16 to day 19, day 20, where your hormones are low. You can go back into these longer fasts. I have 6 fasts that I recommend. You could go, you could do keto again. If you want to lose weight, you're better off doing it in that second window and the first window. And so it's called a power phase. And then the real trick, after all these things that I've said, is that week before your period, day 20 to day 1, is when your body needs to make progesterone. And the challenge with progesterone is it's very susceptible to any swings in cortisol. So exercise will raise cortisol, fasting will raise cortisol, your husband may raise cortisol.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Your kids may raise cortisol. So I call it the nurture phase because you got to nurture yourself. Don't look outside of yourself. Slow things down. Not a time to run a marathon. Not a time to fast. You want to lean into foods. Not a time to go keto. You want to do hormone building foods, squashes and potatoes and beans and citrus fruit and tropical
fruits. So more
fruits.
good healthy carbs is okay in that phase for sure.
Good healthy carbs. We actually were going to call it the chill out phase, but then I'm like, I think people will sit on the couch with a tub of ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm
everything
like,
they built up in the first 20 days is just going to go back to normal.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was like, no, we want them to nurture themselves. Let's call it that.
Yeah.
So we came up with the nurture phase. And you do that until your period starts. And, for perimenopausal women, PMS symptoms can be horrific. But that if you follow this fasting circle, it really minimizes your symptoms of PMS. And we've now taken the circle and we're applying it to infertility. We're applying it to PCOS. And we're seeing that it works every single time. It's like I've only got 5 cases of this right now, but I've had women who've tried to get pregnant for a year. I teach her the fasting circle, teach her how to eat for these hormones, and in 1 month, she's pregnant.
Wow.
So I'd like to get more people trying that and seeing what happens, but it's pretty cool when you start to understand how to match the fast to your hormones. It's really neat.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you just think, again, how many women spend $30,000 to do some kind of in vitro or something, and hey, what if you just spent a month learning how to fast and
that's right,
tie in with your hormones, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, how much money they would save it's insane. It's insane. So we are now teaching it in my academy. We have a whole course in there in my membership group because I'm putting it in the new book. So we'll see when that book comes out. But until that point, we're trying to get it out to people in my membership group so we can keep getting more test cases, watching more people, see how they do.
Very cool. Hey, I was just thinking as you were talking, are there any, and I hate to say this because I'm a big believer in developing mastery and doing everything that you're saying, but are there any hacks or supplements that, women can kind of take that you've seen that, just kind of like a universal one that hey, this is a good one just for overall energy or that can help you throughout that fast? Anything that comes to mind or?
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that because I'm experimenting right now with a bunch of different hacks to minimize hunger. So I believe when we look at fasting, I believe in 6 fasts, and they're all timed. It's everything from intermittent fast to the 3-day water fast. And so what do? If we know we get these great benefits in these longer fasts, how can we help people, women specifically, but these will apply to men as well. How do we help them kill the hunger? Because that's really what's going to stop you in going to a longer fast.
And by the way, Dr. Mindy, it was funny, I meant to tell you because, you're so passionate about fasting. And when you were like, yeah, and then, days 0, through 12, they can do as much fasting as they want. And I'm thinking, all the women listening to this episode are going to be like, but I don't want to fast.
Oh, but you know what? They will. Once you start fasting, you get addicted to it because you feel so good.
Yeah.
So this is where I think, and much love to Dave, and there's a few, Will Cole, he has an intuitive fasting book. I've chatted with him. They've all they kind of have dabbled in the women in fasting. And this is where I'm like, you don't understand. Once a woman discovers fasting and she kills hunger and it gets her to lose weight and she has more energy, she's going to want to keep fasting, but there's going to be a problem if she doesn't know how to do it to her cycle.
Yeah.
So the two minerals I'm playing with right now, there's actually kind of three and this is literally fresh off my brain.
Very cool.
Amino acids is one. So specifically lysine, there's incredible research showing that lysine will go up to the hypothalamus and within 30 seconds kill hunger. Wow. So we're testing this out. I actually this is funny you mentioned this because I just brought this today. I'm trying different versions of them. I have a perfect aminos here. Yeah. And I'm like, let me just try it. I'm going to fast most of today. Let me see how it works. So lysine specifically. Dave is a big fan of MCT oil in your coffee because it helps you get to that ketogenic energy system a little quicker. I would agree from what we've seen. Little bit of fat in the morning, MCT oil specifically, is going to help you make ketones. Ketones will kill hunger for sure. The third thing, and this really affects women a lot, is minerals. So if you're already mineral depleted and you go into some of the longer fasts, you can end up with heart palpitations. Some women will equate it to like a thyroid storm. Their hair changes or their hair falls out. So we do a lot of mineral supplementation. My favorite right now is Element. And we'll put a little pack in your water and just take it as the day goes on. So, that's kind of what I'm seeing right now, but I'm also testing. This is another interesting. I heard Dr. Stephen Gundry say this, and I thought it was fascinating that a lot of times when we're hungry, it's not that we are hungry. We're hungry because our microbiome is hungry. So if we feed our microbiome, the hunger stops. So I've been experimenting with a little powdered prebiotic, not a probiotic, but a prebiotic. Let me see I think of it like fish food. Let me give my microbiome a little food. Doesn't raise my blood sugar. Maybe that'll help. So we're kind of experimenting right now.
That is awesome. I can't wait for I'm sure your new book will have all that good stuff.
It will put it all in there. I actually have a whole chapter called, what breaks a fast. And then in that is like, okay, what are these things this is the most common question I get is like, can I drink this? Can I eat this in my fasting window? So all these little hacks will be put in there.
Amazing. Before we jump into the lightning round of questions, I just wanted to ask any other exciting projects that you're working on besides the new book?
We have a couple. We're always working on something.
I know.
So, one of my passions right now is really to help people end metabolic unfitness. So if we go back and we look at what happened in 2020, and not to get too political here, but we may have had a viral problem, but what's more evident is that we have an immune system problem. We have people that are very immune compromised, but they walk around looking healthy. And at the root of that is that they're metabolically unfit. There was a study that came out of University of North Carolina saying only 12% of Americans are metabolically fit. So we've been really trying to help people understand what metabolic fitness looks like. So I've got a new formula that, again, I'm teaching it in my academy. That's kind of where I go and try things out. I'm like, hey, everybody try this. Tell me how this works. But we have a metabolic formula that we're doing over there, and people are losing weight like quick and large amounts, like 60, 80, 100 pounds. It's in like 5-6 months, like just dropping off, because all fat is just an indication that there's something out of balance. So when we correct that through lifestyle, all of a sudden people drop weight. So we've got that going on. I've got the book. We're pitching it to the big publishers right now, see which path we're going. And then I have a new vision. And that I'm going to do something in January called International Fasting Day, where I want to bring like every fasting expert together. I want to bring celebrities together, and we've got a few that we're working with right now. And I want to see if we can bring more awareness to fasting, But I also want people to skip a meal or two that day, because that's what fasting is.
Yeah.
And I want them to look at what they saved in skipping that meal, and then I want them to donate it to their favorite charity. So that'll be coming out in January. You'll hear more about that.
That is great. I love it.
Thank you.
All right, you ready to jump into some lightning round questions?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. If the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
Well, so what's interesting is the old me wasn't very impressive. So I have a 21-year-old daughter right now. My sister always says to me, did you tell her what you were like at 20? I'm like, wait, I think that's like a backhanded compliment or backstab. I don't know.
Yeah.
The old me would be in awe of what I was capable of doing. You know, the younger version of me did not think that what I was able to accomplish, at least even looking through social media on YouTube. I mean, we have 16 million views on YouTube right now. We're getting about 600,000 new views a month on YouTube. The old me didn't think that was possible. It's crazy. So probably be in awe.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you just think about, you probably would have never thought, and like the impact that you're having, and it just continues to compound as long as you just keep showing up. So it's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Really cool.
What do you think were some choices that you made that made you who you are today?
You know what's the hardest thing that I think for people to do that really worked for me? There were probably two things. One, I'm really careful about the people I surround myself with. I am careful who gets into this brain. So naysayers, complainers, like I don't read my comments very much on social media because like I don't need anybody else's thoughts in my head unless they're positive. But my inner tribe of people are, you know, they give me good reflection, but they're very much can-do people. They have very positive minds. So if somebody, you know, and I've had friendships in the past where people have been complainers, I get rid of them. I just don't hang around those people. Yeah. So I think that's one. The second thing that really drives me a lot is just having a bigger vision for the world. I do not believe that we're on this planet to get something. I believe we're on this planet to give something. And once I really saw that I would like to, when the day I leave this planet, I would really like to know that my life stood for something, that my work changed millions of lives. Once I had that big picture, just everything became effortless at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and just thinking about the story about the medical textbook, and the woman's like, I can't help you. And I mean, that would have been an easy way for you just to go the other route and say, all right, I'm going to just give me the hormones or whatever. You're like, okay, it's time for me to now figure this out and make a difference.
Yeah.
So, very cool.
Exactly.
Who's someone in the, you know, you're such a force to be reckoned with. So, but who, you know, anybody inspires you in the health and wellness world?
You know who I think inspires me the most, and people who know him will be like, oh, yeah, is Dr. Zach Bush. And I'll tell you why he inspires me. A, he's so damn smart.
Yeah.
You hear him talk and you're like, whoa. But I think more importantly, it's his heart. He's so humble. He's really, you get the feeling he's got the bigger picture in mind. And you get the feeling there's no ego attached to it. He's just there to help and to transform the world. When I first time I interviewed him, he actually cried when I asked him. You know, I went into the interview wanting to know more about how our gut health affected our brain health. And the interview, you can hear it on my podcast. It's like one of the first interviews I ever did. And he, at the end, told me that the human race was on a quick path to extinction. And then he cried. And I was like, oh, my God, this guy really cares.
Yeah.
So, and I love he's not, you know, in the world of health influencers and social media right now, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of pointing fingers, and he shows up as love, and he's just that steady Eddie for a bigger vision that doesn't involve fighting, doesn't involve politics, doesn't involve, you know, us versus them, and I love that about him.
Great call. Yeah, I heard him recently on the Del Bigtree podcast, The High Wire, couple times, and he, like you said, he's so steadfast, and
Yeah.
he always brings it around in a different dimension. And like you said, I'm always thinking, all right, Zach, tell me why the pandemic is a joke. And he doesn't go there. He doesn't get sucked into that. He tells you, like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What you need is, like, love. Like, that's what's going to get us out of this, and, like, joining hands and in unity. And he is a special guy.
Yep. In fact, in days when I want to go to social media and point fingers, I always ask myself, okay, what would Zach Bush do? How would he handle this? Because he is so professional and calm, and yet he's going on caustic, more controversial ones like Del Bigtree, but he just stays his course. He has a vision, and the vision is beautiful.
Yeah. Any books that you'd recommend? I'm a big reader. Anything that, like, stood out for any? Is there, like, 1 to 3 books that, really impacted your life?
I'm reading all the time. Okay, so here, and especially for women, and this one's sort of for men, but I'll give you 2 that I don't think people know enough about. The first one is Countdown. Have you read Countdown?
No.
Okay, and you might see if you can interview her. Her name is Dr. Shauna Swan, and she is a research scientist who discovered that phthalates, which is in all of our fragrances and all of our plastics, is lowering sperm counts. And that infertility is actually way more of a male issue than a female issue, and because of these low sperm counts. So the book is, you'll get sucked in right away.
Oh, boy.
And and her research is profound. So if you want to know more about hormones and toxins, that one's great. And if you have any infertility issues, PCOS, men with low testosterone, this is a must read before you do anything.
Wow. Okay.
The second book that I think both women and men should read is Come As You Are. And this one is put out by Emily Nagoski. She's also a PhD. She researches and she teaches. And it's about a woman's sexual desire. And it's the most interesting explanation of how women have accelerators for sexual desire and they have brakes for sexual desire. And when you understand a woman's accelerator and brake, you'll be more in rhythm. If you're married to a woman, if you are a woman, you'll be more in tune with why you have a desire at certain times of the month. Why don't you? It's just beautifully written. And then I'll throw one other one in there. She did a third one with her sister called Burnout. And it's the neuroscience behind burnout and how if we have a ton of stress, we have to find a way to complete the stress cycle. Otherwise, the stress event may be over, but our nervous system still feels like it's in that event. So she talks about how burnout is happening not because of what you're doing today, but because each major stressful environment, you're not completing your own stress cycle, so your nervous system never relaxes. So you're more vulnerable to the next day and the next day. 3 brilliant books that I've read this year that are mind-blowing.
Oh, man, I can't wait. Yeah, I haven't read any of those. Okay, cool.
Yeah, they're great.
Do you have any, like, regular practices that you do or rituals? Like some people have gratitude journals. Do you do anything?
Yeah, there's a couple of rituals. My biggest one is morning time. I get up at 5:30 every morning, and I spend usually the first 2 hours doing sort of a variety of things, reading books. So I read something positive, or I listen to something positive. This morning I did a meditation and a speech from Michael Beckwith. Do you know Michael Beckwith?
No.
He's great.
He's not the one that had the book. It's not from a book that I'm thinking of, right? Michael Beckwith.
He's a reverend. He had one of the biggest churches, non-denominational churches in LA, or he has one. I don't know if it's still the biggest. He was on The Secret. He wrote a book called The Answer Is You. Google him.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do inspiration into my brain through reading. I do a meditation of some kind, and then my new favorite thing that over the last couple of years I've integrated is breathing. So I'll do 20 minutes of breathing. The technique I like right now is called Soma breathing, And you can go to Spotify or YouTube and find it, just Soma breathing. And so I usually do those 3 things: inspiration, meditate, breathe. That's every morning I'm doing that. And then the last part is I'm doing it outside, because your eyes, when it sees the sunrise, it starts your circadian clock. So it makes it easier if you're seeing morning light. It makes it easier for you to fall asleep at night. So, I mean, I live in California, so it's a little bit, it is summertime. You know, in the wintertime, it's a little bit harder, but you want your eyes to register that sun coming up so that your circadian clock starts.
Yeah, I love that. So critical.
Yep.
I want you to finish this sentence, you know, because 2020 was a crazy year, but a lot of people like yourself, I see people like you, you're thriving. And so I want to reframe 2020. 2020 was the greatest gift because ...
Well, okay, I'm gonna say this from a mom perspective. So my high school senior, it was his junior year when we went into 2020. He was on a fast path to get a college scholarship for soccer. He had a tryout with a professional soccer team in England.
Wow.
And all of that went away. And he had to stay home. And I also had all these seminars lined up, ready to travel. I had to stay home. And over that year, we had so much fun together. And one of the things that came out of it was we found a passion for cooking together. And so our whole family just got so connected. My daughter, she actually just moved home, but she lived in Denver. We flew her home almost every month, or we went to her. Our family unit got tighter in 2020. And it not only from a relationship standpoint, but we now have this really cool connection around food. We love to cook together. We love hanging out together. We love eating together. We just unified, and that would not have happened without the pandemic.
Yeah, love that. Wow, man, thank you so much. And then, last but not least, where can people find you, Dr. Mindy?
Well, I'm kind of everywhere, but
you are kind of everywhere. Just Google your name. Yeah.
I'll tell you where I tell you what each platform means to me. So YouTube's my passion project. I spend hours looking at science on fasting. So if you want to know how to fast, you want to know the science behind fasting, go to YouTube. We try to get you as much there. Instagram is also a lot of fasting information. I'm starting to do reels where I answer fasting questions in reels. So a lot of short little blurbs of fasting there. I have a Reset Academy where it's a membership group where you can come in, and I've got health coaches in there, and we do experiences together, so you can join me there. And if you forget all of that, you could just go to my website, drmindypelz.com, and you can figure out what feels right for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Joel. Appreciate you having me.